Hello, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Rail Rangers on the Road. Every month, the Midwest Rail Rangers take you to an interesting and unique railroad destination across the Midwest, including places in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, and Wisconsin. The Midwest Rail Rangers, a 501c3 nonprofit, was founded in 2015 to provide onboard educational programs across the Midwest. Perhaps you have caught us on select weekends on the South Shore Line between Chicago and South Bend, Indiana, on private rail excursions featuring dome cars and other heritage rail equipment, Amtrak charters and motor coach trips organized by the 20th Century Railroad Club of Chicago, open house events at the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad featuring the Sky Parlour car and the Mark Twain ZEPHYR, and at various outreach events such as Train Fest in Milwaukee and Mad City Rail in Madison, Wisconsin. And now mark your calendar for the first Sunday night of every month at 7 p.m. Central Time for Rail Rangers on the Road. Without further ado, here is this month's program. Three, two, one. Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for another Rail Rangers, a virtual educational program. It is just after 7 p.m., February 20th, 2022. Midwest Rail Rangers President Robert Tabern here with you once again for the third and final time in Lincoln County in north central Wisconsin. This is part 3 of our 3-part series where we are getting an in-depth look at the railroad, the extensive railroad collection that belongs to Ralph Wehlitz, a 98-year-old World War II Purple Heart veteran who's got one of the coolest collections of railroad memorabilia and model railroad equipment anywhere. He doesn't let just anybody in the basement, but he's agreed to let the Midwest Rail Rangers in over the course of the winter here. And we're excited to bring you the third and final part here in our series. So without further ado, for the last part of our series that we started back at the end of January and did the second part the 1st of February, and here we are on the 20th of February. For the last part, let's send it to Ralph to wrap up our 3-part series.
Ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. We had mentioned some steam gauges earlier, and here are the 2 steam gauges. This is the very early one. If you look at it closely, you get a sense that it is a much earlier design than this, which I think would be maybe early 20th century, maybe even somewhat later than that.
Wow.
But again, they're obviously from different eras. And I never realized that until long after I had bought that and was thinking about that equipment. I think I mentioned the telephone, that this is used in company service.
Oh, ring, ring.
At one time I used this for an intercom. I had another phone
Really?
upstairs that I could call with this crank.
You could call or telegraph that you're hungry and you need food down here.
And the builder's plates, again, are Bullerman products. They're both plaster.
Cool. Nice.
And just to remind you of the versatility of this accumulation of stuff, this is a Pullman car fan.
Yeah. Very important before the air conditioning, right?
Oh yeah.
Keep you cool at night when you're trying to sleep in your room. Nice.
This is an interesting rear end marker. And I bought it, I think I bought it from an antique dealer. Didn't pay a lot of money for it, but I realized it had been wired for electricity. It had this cord on it.
Oh.
And I thought, well, some guy bought it and wired it and put a lamp in it, but that's okay. I think I'd like to have it anyhow. So I bought it, took it home, and since the cord is all there and looked in good shape, I plugged it in, and wham, I blew out the lamp instantly. The lamp never lit. It just pow, it was gone. Why is that? Well, I opened the slide and removed the lamp and looked at it, and the lamp is marked 32 volts.
Oh.
Aha. This lamp has been electrified for railroad service. And then I took a closer look at what's inside here, and sitting on the oil tank is an oil burner and an electric lamp. And if you pull the tank out, turn it around and shove it back, then this is centered in the lamps. The way it is now, the electric light is centered in the lamps. So
Very
it's
cool.
designed for dual service, which makes it kind of a unique item. This is real, and this isn't.
Any idea where that came from, or where?
No.
What station?
And this is another Pullman lighting fixture.
Oh.
And this is real.
American Locomotive 68175.
I had a friend who took a teaching job at Rock Falls, Illinois, which is in the Sterling area. And he attended a church that, as it happened, was also attended by the fellow who was president of Northwest Steel and Wire Company, the steel mill that's cutting up all those locomotives. And he became quite friendly with this fellow, and eventually told him that he had a friend who was very interested in railroads, model railroading and real railroads and railroad history and the whole works. And sure, he would really like it if there might be some kind of a artifact from a train or locomotive that you could make available for him. Well, that president of the railroad, of the steel mill, I guess must have been a pretty considerate and generous guy. So he goes out into the yard, which is all full of scrappable steam locomotives, and he puts a crew to work, a crew of 2 men working to remove a builder's plate from one of the locomotives. Well, as you can imagine, those builder's plate would have many years accumulation of paint and soot and grease and everything else imaginable on them. So he has them thoroughly clean the builder's plate to this condition. Thoroughly clean. Then they build a crate into which to pack it and send it by railroad, by freight to Merrill for me.
Wow.
So that's how I happen to have it. The locomotive is a New York Central Class J2, number 5297.
Okay.
There's a picture of 5297 in Dubin's book on the passenger train, And there's also a picture of 5297 on a train in a BB book on the 20th Century Limited. So, 2 pictures of that locomotive pulling the 20th century. This is a reprint from the Historical Society, I think.
Wisconsin railroads.
Yeah, it's a very early railroad map.
So for those wondering where Merrill is, we're right there. And of course Chicago here, Milwaukee, Twin Cities. Our headquarters over in the Barron area. Of course, Superior, and there's the Omaha X. We did a program about the Omaha X and the Wisconsin Great Northern would be there. So Merrill, so we're here, Lincoln County. Oh, we even have stuff in closets. Oh,
the door handle is railroad too, of course.
Jeez.
And
Oh, look what you did. You even have a lighted number plate.
I was never much interested in diesel locomotives. It always seemed to me that as the railroads got into the diesel era, what the railroads was doing became far less interesting. You know, they weren't running way freights anymore. Freight houses were closed. No LCL traffic. Lots of changes like that. And of course, all of the activity related to steam, that's all gone. So, getting something of a diesel locomotive didn't excite me very much. But people have come down here and thought this was really wonderful to have a number plate and the builder's plate off of this diesel locomotive, the South Shore locomotive.
Oh.
Which apparently was dismantled at North Fond du Lac and was given to me by Fran Wiener, who was a caller on the Sioux line for many years. Oh, I guess I didn't even mention the 2 rear end markers that we bypassed way over there under or near the headlight. Well, you can see them from here.
Yes.
You can see one of them painted yellow.
And you can see the other Ralph. Hi. Very cool.
And this is another, well, not another, I guess I hadn't even mentioned the classification lamp that's over on the table there. And somewhere it should be.
Oh, there we go.
This is a Milwaukee, and it's obviously an oil fixture that has been converted. Doesn't have a chimney on it anymore. It's just got a cap that fits down there, and then there's a little bracket that keeps the green colored glass in there, and you can turn that bracket around and it'll show white. You know about green and white on locomotives.
Oh, why don't you explain that to our people maybe who don't know?
Oh, well.
I know, but maybe not everybody does.
Right,
So
well,
why don't we tell them?
All right, let's go over and look at this one. I think we can flip this one. We can move this telegraph key, and this is a classification lamp. lamps of this sort were carried at the front of a locomotive, usually at the upper part of the boiler, one on each side. I was going to say at the corner of the boilers, but since it's round, it doesn't have a corner. But these lamps are normally not lit, but there are two special circumstances under which they do turn on those two lights. In one situation, they turn on a green light that in railroad parlance means section following. In other words, there's another train nominally identical to the train that's carrying the green light and following that train on the same schedule. It's not scheduled at a different time. It's while it's running behind the one with the green lantern, it's on the same schedule, and for timetable purposes, it's the same train.
Okay.
But they have so much business for that train that they're running it in two sections, two separate trains.
Okay.
Sometimes more than two. The 20th Century Limited, arguably the most prestigious train that ever operated in the United States, always ran in three sections. That was standard practice because they had so much traffic. On a holiday weekend like Thanksgiving, it would probably run in 7, 8, or 9 sections, up to 9 sections. When you think of the number of train sets the railroad had to own in order to operate a train like that in 9 sections going in both directions. So you've got, in effect, 18 trains. And that train was so prestigious and so important that everything had to be absolute perfection about that train. Anybody who was anybody, if they were traveling between New York and Chicago, they were on the 20th Century. That was the way to go. And if you were on that train, you were in the company of celebrities of Hollywood or government or whatever. Important people rode the 20th Century. And that's only half the story, isn't it? This lamp can also be operated with a white light. A white light means an extra train, a train that is not scheduled. You might have to run a special train for some unique purpose, and you run a train that is not in the timetable. It's not written down on a schedule anywhere. So you run it this way as an extra. It might be a passenger train, it might be a freight. It could be an extra for a wide variety of reasons, but for whatever reason, it runs with a white lamp. So the section crew that's working on the track, they see this train coming down the line, which they weren't expecting. All right, it's an extra. It's all right. We don't have to. Otherwise, they might think a scheduled train is off schedule, running late or running early for some reason or other. No, it's okay. It's an extra, and that lamp tells us that it is an extra.
Gotcha.
Did I get it right?
Sounds good. It sounds better coming from you than from me.
Well, I don't know that would necessarily follow.
I saw uniforms over here before you go to the maps. Can I ask about your uniforms?
Yeah.
You don't happen to have a ZEPHYR uniform? We've been looking high and low for a ZEPHYR uniform for the Wisconsin Great Northern.
Maybe if I could get this.
Do you need a hand?
Off of here.
Well, that looks Milwaukee Road to me. That's not a Burlington. No ZEPHYRettes there.
That's that's a Milwaukee conductor's uniform. It's got the vest with the gold buttons on it, and
That's authentic.
all there. And this one is a Sioux Line trainman's uniform. I don't think there's a vest with that one. I don't remember now.
Look at the buttons though.
And white buttons rather than gold.
Ooh. Both of them authentic?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You saw the Sioux Line cap.
Yeah, looking at it right now. Oh, you gotta have a Milwaukee Road cap. Is that the one you were telling about your student?
Yeah.
That's the one. Aw, a sweet story.
And I have a black necktie to wear with it.
Do you ever wear it? Or
I haven't worn it for quite a while. There was an excursion train operating up here. Well, there have been several that we were on. Members of the Wausau Club served as car attendants on a couple of the excursion trains that were operated in the area. One was between Wausau and Merrill at one time, in connection with some festival that some kind of a log jam affair or something in Wausau, and they had the 1385 up here.
Oh.
And with a train, and that ran between Wausau and Merrill, and there were half dozen or so fellows from the Wausau Club that were car attendants on that train, and we also won on one for the Sioux Line Society, operating out of Rhinelander to Ladysmith, I think. And there may have been one or two other trains that we were car attendants for, and. Those of us that were attendants all had uniforms, or at least parts of uniforms. I had quite a complete uniform. So
very nice. And you got a collection of maps. Maps are always my favorite thing.
Well, yeah, these are pretty interesting maps because this is.
I'm a map guy.
These are official Railroad Commission maps. This is 1923. That one is 1914, I think.
Wow.
This is quite an early one. I think it's 03 or 04. There should be a date in there.
1904. Right on. Yeah.
And don't recall what that one is. Oh, that's not a railroad map, but it's if I remember correctly. It shows railroads. It's not an official Railroad Commission map, but all the lines on it are railroads, and I think there's an overprinting of lines that represent highways.
Oh, okay. Some of the early
So it's an
early highway
system.
map. Sure.
Where they simply took a railroad map and then put the highway. I thought the highways are there lines in a different color? Do you see any red lines? Lighting isn't good here.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Well, maybe I'm mistaken about that.
I see mostly railroads.
Okay.
But maybe there's some highways. So for the people who don't know, where Merrill is here.
Yeah.
And so if you follow the line south, you end up, you said, in New Lisbon.
At New Lisbon, right.
Which was the main Milwaukee road.
Yeah.
From Chicago to Minneapolis, and it would break off at New Lisbon.
When this line was originally built by the Wisconsin Valley Railroad Company, it started at Tomah,
Oh, sure.
and went up on, and the line was the railroad right of way is now occupied by Highway 173, I think.
Oh, no kidding.
And you can tell you're on a railroad grade because it's absolutely straight and level.
Mm-hmm.
And at Babcock, that line joins the present route, which is to New Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why the change was made. My best guess is that since most of the traffic is coming from Chicago rather than from the west,
Yeah.
this is cutting off some mileage.
Yeah, you would kind of. Yeah, you'd end up backtracking then if you were.
Yeah.
Everything was coming out of Chicago.
Yeah, you have to go here and then you have to get back.
So then, as far as north of here, then, because we're in, it goes up to Rhinelander.
No, doesn't go through Rhinelander. It goes through Tomahawk, and then Minocqua.
Okay.
And
just
and Woodruff.
So, what? It just a few miles short of the upper Peninsula Michigan border, pretty much, right?
And there was a line that went over a little ways across at one time. Now that may not show on
that map, but that went pretty. It looks like literally.
Eventually, the end of the line was Star Lake.
Okay, where's Star Lake? Further south. So those little lines up.
Well, it's right in here somewhere.
Okay.
I can't see it.
So pretty much just shy of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
That's right.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, we got more stuff over here.
This is a flagman's kit.
Interesting. Is that a thermos?
No.
Oh.
If a train makes an emergency stop, a brakeman, at least theoretically, immediately leaps off the train and starts running back down the track behind the train.
Okay.
To warn any following train that this train is standing on the track for some unexpected reason, and we'd prefer that you not run into it and kill all the people.
Yes.
So the brakeman, grabs his flagman's kit, forget how this opens. I had it open the other day. Oh. Oops. I guess it does open at the top, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fuses.
And it carries fusees.
Sure.
And they can be set to, they are designated for different lengths of time. And he carries a flag so that he can wave a flag if the train is in sight. And the kit also contains, on this outside V-shaped bracket, or Y-shaped, torpedoes.
Oh, wow.
And when I found this kit, it had about a half a dozen or more torpedoes on it.
Wow.
Which I left on there for many years. And then I read somewhere that railroad torpedoes tend to deteriorate and become unstable with increasing age.
And by unstable, you mean go kaboom in the house?
Exactly.
Oh, no.
And I thought, well, that would not be a good thing to happen, particularly if I'm entertaining a fourth grade class. So I mentioned that to a neighbor who happened to be a lieutenant with the fire department.
Oh, they called the bomb squad in?
And I said, I got these. I showed him the torpedoes on this thing, and I said, what do you think ought to do? And he said, well, I'll take care of it. So he called the Wausau bomb squad. And,
I was kidding.
And
you made the 11 o'clock news.
And the torpedoes, he'd taken them off, and they were out in the driveway. And pretty soon the Wausau bomb squad comes up and collects them and takes them to Wausau and disposes of them.
Well, safety first, right? The old railroad motto.
Oh, I knew there was one somewhere. We're talking about talapots. Here's another.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this one is marked or not. I don't see that it is, but it is a talipot. And this is just an ordinary kerosene can.
Okay. Well, how about the bell up here?
The bell.
The bell.
Yes.
That's been catching my attention since we started. Is that the dinner bell? Or is it the Taco Bell?
Not exactly. We have to be pretty gentle with that if we're going to let it speak. Because,
Okay.
People don't realize that this was designed to be heard a mile away in the great out of doors.
So gentle, not because it's in bad condition, but gentle for our ears.
If you give that a good hard pull, then we all have to go lay down for a while.
Oh.
Try to recuperate.
What'd you say? I can't hear you. Do you know the history of the bell or what it was off of?
I know this about it. It was on the property of a man who had been who was at that time a retired locomotive engineer.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, he was active on the Valley Line. I don't know that he wasn't. And he had this bell on a post in his yard.
Really?
So the wife could ring it when she wanted him to come to dinner or something. So it was there. And then he decided to move to Florida.
Okay.
Which he did. The property was sold to a Jim O'Day. And Jim O'Day had lots of children, including a daughter that was the same age as my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the little girls were of school age and 6, 8, 10, 12 years of age, they would tend to have birthday parties when the little girl would invite all of her friends from school that were of that age or people she associated with, and they'd have a party at the girl's home after school.
Okay.
Well, get to be supper time, and then the father has to distribute all these girls to their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jim O'Day is delivering my daughter to home here about 6 o'clock in the evening. I was in the middle of winter. And she comes bounding in the house, and she's all excited. Daddy, Daddy, guess what Mr. O'Day has in the trunk of his car? Well, this was back in the day when most cars were rear-wheel drive, and Mr. O'Day, realizing that this was very heavy, was carrying that around in the trunk of his car to improve traction in the snowy roads in wintertime. Well,
isn't that what everybody in northern Wisconsin carries around?
I couldn't let that go unchallenged, so I called Mr. O'Day the next day and said, I understand you've got this bell that you're hauling around in your trunk of your car, and would you consider parting with it? And he agreed that he would part with it for $50. So
you got a steal of a deal again.
I laid out $50 for the bell. Well, yeah.
Wow.
Another instance where I actually asked for something, but as I say, that didn't happen very often. These are familiar items. I think many people have seen pictures of locomotive engineers with the long spout oil can.
Was that just to reach a certain, like a far underneath area of the steam locomotive if they needed
Probably most likely to reach in behind the drivers.
Okay.
And particularly
Get in there
to lubricate the main bearing behind the drivers.
Okay.
The engineer, the term for what the engineer did before every run was oiling around.
Oiling around.
And that meant all around the locomotive. There are all kinds of places that needed lubrication.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used an oil can like that. This was one of the problems with steam locomotive as compared to an internal combustion engine. With an internal combustion engine, diesel, gasoline, whatever, all of the parts that need lubrication are enclosed. They're inside. They're in a tank, or they're in the machinery somewhere where it's easy to keep feeding oil to whatever needs lubrication. With a steam locomotive, all that stuff is hanging outside in the open air, and it's difficult to lubricate and keep lubricated. As an illustration of the problem, the Chicago Northwestern, on a run from Minneapolis to Chicago, would get as far as Milwaukee, and at Milwaukee they would change engines for the last 90 miles to Chicago. The reason was that the main drive bearing, the bearing that connects the main rod with the driving wheels, was out of lubrication.
Yeah.
That was lubricated by pumping a stick of grease, hard grease, into a bearing with an air gun of some kind that would force that grease into that bearing. And that grease would last long enough to go from Minneapolis to Milwaukee, but by the time they got to Milwaukee, it needed re-greasing. So they could run it to the shop where there was the facilities to re-grease it, or to solve the problem much more quickly, simply replace the locomotive with another locomotive that had fresh grease in it and run that to Chicago. So that was what they did.
But wouldn't be able to make it all the way from Minneapolis to Chicago.
They couldn't make it all the way. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, what do we have left? We got this over here.
Yeah, that's a relay from a signal tower. That was the tower at Saxon, Wisconsin, which is between Ironwood, Michigan, and Ashland, Wisconsin.
Okay.
About halfway in between, I believe. And it's where the Northwestern, Chicago Northwestern, and the South Shore, Duluth South Shore and Atlantic, where those lines crossed, which was in northern Wisconsin, between those two cities. This thing is also, I believe this is also from Saxon, and this strange looking device is a timing device, and it doesn't work. And I often thought about trying to fix it, but I don't know just how to go about it. If you set a signal or align a track a certain way
Mm-hmm.
at the tower, you set this thing, and it's a timing device, and you can't change that, whatever you set,
Mm-hmm.
for a given amount of time, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, and then this thing will release the control so that you can then make any changes. The idea is to prevent making a change right after a signal has been set.
Okay.
And if you changed our switch or a signal in some way at that time, you could cause an accident. So to prevent that, you use a timing device like this.
Sounds good.
And normally it has a, they normally would have a kind of a glass dome over it with
Perfect.
this knob sticking out the top.
Well, we got about 4 more minutes left. Anything else you want to show us? You got about all here?
Covered everything we've got.
All right. Well, in a little bit, we'll sit down and interview you, and we'll also take a look at the. We're going to take a look at the model railroad, and we'll hear about.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. The name of the railroad is the Panokie, Grandview, and Winnipeg.
How'd you come up with that one? Winnipeg, Canada?
Winnipeg, Canada.
We're not that far north, Ralph.
Well, no, we aren't. But I was fascinated by the names of some of the railroads that I saw when I was up in the north, and having looked at maps of the northern area, particularly Ashland, Bayfield County, that region.
Okay.
And what struck me was that some railroads have names that sound very local, and yet at the same time project a image of becoming a great international, or not international, but nationwide railroad, or a multi-state railroad. The one name that particularly fascinated me was a little line. It was about 15 miles long, maybe 20, and the name of it was the Bayfield Harbor and Great Western Railroad.
How about the Wisconsin Great Northern Railroad?
Well, that's another example of a similar thing. Yeah. Well, so with that in mind, I'm thinking, what would be a nice name? So I think, well, Panokie was a settlement about 2 miles south of where Mellon is today.
Oh.
And that was where the railroad, where the Wisconsin Central had their first winter camp in building south from Ashland. So, well, I need another community near there to create the idea of a kind of a local regional railroad. So Panokie, Grandview is, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 miles from Panokie, maybe not even that far. And then to express the idea of great ambition for our railroad, Winnipeg, with the plan that the railroad will proceed northwest toward Lake Superior, and then with a ferry system, or we aren't sure just what yet, we'll build a bridge across the western end of Lake Superior to avoid all the congestion of Duluth and Superior. So we make a direct connection to the Canadian Pacific.
Can it be a road bridge too? I don't like driving through Duluth. That would be nice. Can we make it a combined road railroad bridge? Can we negotiate, Ralph?
Well, we're going to pretty much stick to train travel on that route now.
All right.
If you really want to make the trip, it's just a small train ticket.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the scheme for the railroad.
I don't know where we start here. This is amazing. Let me tell you.
The layout of the railroad, the basic plan of the railroad, is what is called a point to loop. plan. The point is this area up here. This is the main terminal of the railroad. And I found this name on a railroad map. And the name of my main terminal is Coda, C-O-D-A, Coda.
Okay.
There was a place, I'm sure it was never a town, but there was a place, maybe a siding for loading logs or something, a place called Coda on the Northern Pacific, on the line from Iron River to Washburn. Yeah, the Northern Pacific had built an extension. The Northern Pacific had the line from Duluth to Ashland. And as a branch off of that at Iron River, there was this line that went north and then turned east when ended at Washburn. And at one time, the Northern Pacific had planned that Washburn would become their great eastern terminus. There'd be a major grain port. In fact, they did build a couple of big grain elevators at Washburn.
So this is Coda here.
This is Coda.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's downtown Coda. What's going on today? What's the latest?
This is primarily the industrial.
Do we have
area.
a parade going on, or is this?
Well, there's some fire engines heading down this way. So,
okay.
That portends something. I'm not sure just what at the moment.
Okay.
But this is primarily an industrial area. There's the sawmill lumber facility there, a wholesale grocer, Eastern printing plant is there, and some commercial establishments here. And this is a fabric, like a woolen mill plant. That's the biggest industry down here. Then there's the freight house and team track. So that's all in this lower area.
Mm-hmm.
The track leaves this area and heads off that way. And if you laid it out on a map, it would be heading roughly south from Coda. And the way the model is laid out, we make a big circle there. We come down around this way. And over here is the Mellon station. This is Mellon Junction, and that is a model of the actual depot that stood at Mellon, and Bill Eller built that for me.
Wow.
And it's a junction. The line going up the hill goes to the only place that doesn't have a real railroad name for its name, and it's a place called Drang. And I took that from a previous railroad that I had. Well, we don't have to go into the naming of that one. But then the main line takes the middle level through here, enters a tunnel, and makes a large underground loop. Comes out on the lowest level down here, continues along this line, and back over here. Here, trains have to.
We're back to Mellon.
Well, we're down here actually. At this switch, we have to decide whether we're going to go this way or that way, and the normal routing is to go that way. This track is passenger, this is freight.
Okay.
And goes off, enters that tunnel, and our operating plan is, our operating scheme is that the trains go off through that tunnel. They are continuing on off the stage of what we see here.
Yes.
And actually they are held in that tunnel until they come back as another train.
Oh. And what town is? Tell us what town is.
Well, this is Pinokie,
This is okay.
and that's a pretty busy place.
Well, it looks like it.
Uh,
You got a lot of industrial.
yeah, we've got a warehouse there, and then a freight house beyond that, and a feed mill beyond that, and then on the other track, there's a stockyard, little a stock pen, I guess, and a lumber and fuel dealer. And then next to that over here is the major industry in this area, and that's the Berg Mishkar plant. I'm not sure what they manufacture. I've never found out, but they're very
just
busy.
knock on the door and ask. Sometimes you have to just
lot of cars
be intrusive.
going in and out there. In fact, they've got I think four sidings there. It's a busy operation. Freight house here, coal facilities, and passenger station.
So is this the controls then is this the control tower?
Control tower.
Or is this the control tower?
Well, this
I'm so confused. I only have a little HO in the basement. It used to be an N scale in Milwaukee. My wife actually let me have an HO when we got a real house. I have nothing fancy like that.
This is essentially the main line.
Okay.
This is Coda here.
And these are all the switches.
And the switches, Here's the big tunnel over there where you see the dotted line. That's hidden trackage, underground trackage.
Okay. When did you start building this?
I started building this railroad in 1963.
Wow.
We moved into the house in December of 62. I drew plans for 6 months.
Okay.
And started building the railroad on the 4th of July in 63.
Wow. So they're coming up on their 60th anniversary.
Yeah, the railroad is old, and it shows its age in a multitude of ways. Yeah.
Do they have anything planned here in 2023 for the 60th anniversary of the railroad? Are they still working on plans?
No.
Okay.
We're still worrying about trying to get the trains running.
Oh, yes, economic slowdown here for the Pinokie, Grandview, and Winnipeg. So you got a roundhouse here, which is pretty cool.
That's modeled after the roundhouse at Rhinelander.
Oh.
It's pretty accurate. And the coaling station was modeled after the one at Rhinelander.
So what was the first building, or what was the first area that you worked on then in 1963?
Well, I started in that corner back there.
Okay.
And then worked around.
So worked around this way?
The Coda yard down there is the last part that was finished.
And did you design all this yourself, or have you had a lot of friends over the years who?
No, it's pretty much a one-man operation.
Oh, okay. So they're not hiring right now, the Pinokie Grandview.
No.
Okay. And do you run off? You have timetables here then?
I don't have a timetable, but I have a schedule.
Okay.
Which is pretty much a schedule of the relationship between trains and train movements. This is a schedule of mainline movements, and the other sheets are essentially supporting movements to make these possible, like making up a train, classifying a train, whatever, various kinds of activities in various locations to prepare for the movements over the main line.
Well, is there anything running tonight?
No.
No. Okay. It's after hours here. Have you found, I guess, having a railroad now that's 57 years old, has it been hard? Because I would imagine technology must have changed over the years. So how do you have to convert certain things, or really has not much changed? Or I guess You have to adapt, I
guess
guess.
I'm not really changing my technology.
Oh.
Although,
but I mean,
no,
things you buy. I guess I don't know, but I would imagine what you would buy in 1963 for a model, for an HO layout would be significantly different than what is available in 2021.
I have a lot of my turnouts that are controlled by the Walthers TS5 switch motor.
Okay.
And I've got quite a few of those TS5s installed on the railroad, and some of them are giving me some problems.
Oh.
And
okay.
So I wrote to Walthers and said, well, I'm having this problem with the TS5s.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you can suggest as a way of coping with that problem. Well, it took about a month for me to get a response from Walthers.
Come on, Walthers. I got some friends who work there. Come on.
The fellow that wrote,
Keith, this is you.
The fellow that wrote to me wrote back and said, I finally found somebody who remembers the TS5.
Aww.
and he doesn't have much in the way of suggestions. And he wrote to me what this old fellow, presumably old, what he could advise me to do, and everything he said is stuff that I'm way beyond that level of thinking about how to run a TS5.
So how old is this, the board here? Is this original or
this?
Yeah. And did you make this yourself?
Oh, yeah,
or
sure.
Oh,
yeah.
You made this yourself.
I didn't build the cart. Well, yeah, I guess I did assemble it, as a matter of fact. But
all this with the switches and stuff,
yeah,
you did yourself.
Totally my own scheme.
Okay. Wow. Have you ever thought about expanding upstairs?
No.
With some double helixes and all the fancy stuff, or is it very happy being here and
This is about as big as a one-man railroad ought to go, I think.
Yeah. That is really cool.
I like the idea of big railroads, and I like the idea of railroads that are operated by a crew of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people. I've never had a lot of people around here that could become operators.
Oh, okay.
And so
it's very hard to qualify. The G Corps and the rules are very hard.
Well, for whatever reason, this has been pretty much a single-handed railroad.
There you go.
In both senses of the word.
Well, thank you for showing us this. I appreciate it. It's very beautiful work.
Millions of hours.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the third and final part of Ralph Wehllitz's memorabilia collection here in central Wisconsin. A great, like I said the last time, boy, this is a great indoor program to do because it's cold and below zero and lots of snow on the ground here.
I'm ready to go back inside and have some hot chocolate.
Oh, that sounds good. Anyway, so we hope you enjoyed all three parts of Ralph Wehllitz's memorabilia collection. And, this is our 40-something, I think 43rd, 40-something like that.
Wow.
Virtual
program.
We're
getting to our 50th. Wow.
We are.
Fast.
We are. But what we're going to do from here on out, as we refocus a little bit on our onboard educational programs and our main mission, we hope you enjoyed this. The last almost 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, we've been doing our virtual programs, and we're going to continue doing our virtual programs. However, as we focus a little bit more on our in-person programs on the South Shore and Wisconsin Great Northern and private cars and all that, we are going to be bumping these virtual programs now back to just one program a month. We'll be doing them the first Sunday night. Oh, you want to keep doing them? You want to keep doing
but they're going to miss us.
No, we'll still be on the first Sunday night of every month. We'll still be doing our Rail Rangers virtual programs.
Aww.
And I hope they can come on out and
join us in person, though.
Yeah. And we'll still be doing our virtual programs as an added bonus. Again, the first Sunday night of every month, and so that means March 2022.
That's right.
And when is that program?
March 6th.
2022 will be the next virtual program, and we're going to be taking people on the Texas Eagle. This is going to be a it'll be a two-parter from in March and April 2022, and we're going to go all the way from Los Angeles to St. Louis. We had a lot of people who wrote in and liked our California ZEPHYR that we did the end of last year, in October of last year, where we took everybody from San Francisco to Ottumwa.
Yeah.
So we decided to do another one of these Amtrak trip reports, and we'll be taking everybody in March and April coming up here from Los Angeles to St. Louis.
That's right.
on
We're
the Eagle.
gonna take you anywhere from our roomettes to our room to our dinner to the stops. And anything in between.
So we didn't want to say we're going away, because we're definitely not. But we do have a lot of duties to get us back on track after the virus, to focus on our mission, our real onboard educational programs. But we don't want to give this up. We're kind of planning on giving it up, but we have got a lot of good feedback. So we'll keep doing it just once a month, the first Sunday night, 7 o'clock Central Time, from here on out. And
all right, that's okay.
All right. Until then, March 6th, we're going to see them in sunny LA.
All right.
We get to go to Los Angeles, where it's not below zero.
Right.
There's no snow on the ground. Or maybe there will be.
Maybe there will be.
I heard there's a snowstorm and it headed for West Texas.
There you go.
I'm not kidding. So we'll see.
Right.
All right, bye. On behalf of the Midwest Rail Rangers, thank you so much for joining us for this program. Here's a look at the next program. Make sure you mark your calendar for this, and we look forward to seeing you then. In the meanwhile, if you're planning an Amtrak trip, don't forget about one of our exciting and interesting rail route guides. For more information, go to www.railrangers.org. That's www.railrangers.org, and click on the Rail Rangers store. There are plenty of options for both local and long-distance rail route guides, in traditional book format, PDF ebook, and even MP3 podcasts. Until we gather together next month, the first Sunday of every month at 7 p.m. Central Time, we hope you have a great week and a great month ahead, and come out and join us on one of our onboard educational programs. For a listing of our in-person programs, go to our website. Again, that's www.railrangers.org, and click on upcoming events. Until next month, we'll see you then.